good opportunity to discuss some things as it relates to emergency power. And, you know, a lot of the material you may already know. I'm sure we've got some folks that may not know some of this stuff. So hopefully we can all share. And as Ken had said earlier, there's a ton of knowledge in this room. So hopefully we can go through some, learn a few things. So recent history, as Mary Jean said, we had the 6th largest power outage. We had over 120,000 without power. And this was what the MLGW power outage map looked like after the storm. And, February 2nd, 2022, we had an ice storm that knocked out power to 240,000 people. And I believe Steve was without power for, what, 10 days? 10 days because of that one. May 27, 2017, severe storms knocked out power to 190,000. This was the storm that led me to buy my first generator. I had just been to Sam's Club, had just bought groceries, and the power went out that night. I was also a newly licensed ham. I had just gotten my license the night before, and I remember having my little handy talkie, listening to the Delta net or not the net, it was actually just listening, clamoring for any information, if anybody knew anything as to an ETA. The next morning I woke up and we still didn't have power. And so I told my wife, I said, you know, I really think I should go get a generator. I went to Home Depot, they were out. Went to Harbor Freight, and I think there were only 3 left. And there you go, and here we are. Not as recent history, July 22nd, 2003, Hurricane Elvis, as it's affectionately called, knocked out power for 339,000 customers. I remember that. I wasn't living in Memphis. I was living out east of Hernando, and I was actually outside when that came through. And I remember having a supervisor that lived over near the University of Memphis area. He was without power for almost 3 weeks. And how many people remember the 1994 ice storm? So everybody knows about that one. And actually, where I used to live in Hernando, I remember my father-in-law telling me that they were without power for 6 weeks. So all of this to say that power outages are a very real issue here in the Mid-South. And we can all blame Memphis Light, Gas, and Water. Just kidding. All we want for their infrastructure, but we still have to deal with it nonetheless. And I did see where they pledged, I can't remember what the dollar amount was, but it does seem like if they can ever get out of storm recovery mode, that they are going to be working hard to update our infrastructure. So when all else fails, amateur radio works. That is true. We have never had a better example of that than what happened during this most recent power outage, because if the power being out wasn't bad enough, can you hear me now? There was a fiber cut with Verizon. So look at your cell phone, no cell service available. I didn't have Verizon as my carrier, but the carrier I had uses Verizon's backbone, so it affected me too. So what I was going to do now, I may put her on the spot a little bit, but I was going to turn it over to Mary Jean for just a little bit to explain everything that she did, because this was on a Friday night, and she didn't skip a beat, called the net that night, did a fantastic job, and I remember you saying something like you were literally calling it with a piece of notebook paper and a flashlight. So if you wouldn't mind sharing.
Yeah, so I mentioned it earlier. I ended up not having power for just under 8 days, and I was scheduled to call the net that night, and it was hot. We did have a generator running, thankfully. I don't know how much I would have been able to stand being in the house if we didn't with 100 degrees, but either way, I already had this radio Go Box set up, ready to go. And so it's something I've been working on for the past couple of years. and I was really excited to be able to rely on it. And like he said, I was able to jump in and call the net like any other Friday night when I call it. The difference is that I used this little flashlight, moved it down so I could see what I was writing on. And I could have probably drug the lamp in from across the house and all that, but it worked fine. And so normally when we call the net, we have this little nice Excel sheet where we can punch in everybody's suffix, and it populates the full call sign and the city where they're from and things like that. But the really awesome thing when folks check in frequently on the information net, because it is every night at 8 o'clock except for the one night that we meet here for the club meeting. And so there's several of you guys in this room who faithfully check in every single night or nearly every night. And I might, if we ever have a pile up, if something's wrong and you drop out and we can just catch one letter out of that suffix, there's a lot of times where we can tell exactly who that is because of how frequent you check in. So I do want to take a minute to say, if you're not frequently checking in, that is something that helps when things go wrong. But I literally had this, so I keep this printed out. So this is our net preamble, and then just was handwriting down everything. And the only thing not pictured or not here tonight is the antenna. I left that at home, but everything else I literally just plugged in this radio, plugged in the battery, and called the net. And so it's a nice setup for me, and it works. Something else I had down here, and this was used, I've been working on this to make it into a solar setup eventually. So like this battery that's in here is just a 35 amp hour SLA, so it is not the battery that's going to stay in here. But I mean, this is literally a work in progress, and for the first 2 or 3 nights, especially before we even got the generator, this gave us the possibility to communicate via cell phone without having to go out in the car. My neighbor, I've got an elderly neighbor that we were helping quite a bit while she was there. She didn't have a car charger, so she had no way to charge her phone to keep in touch with her family members. And so I went over there, got her phone as well, put it on this battery charger, and it was charging flashlights, it was charging like 3 or 4 cell phones at once. And so it may be a work in progress for me, and where I didn't think I had a whole lot going on. But I mean, I didn't charge it once for the 8 days, and I was able to charge, cell phones and everything, flashlights and all that multiple times on it. So, I just want to take a minute to say it doesn't have to be perfect. As we're talking about stuff, whether it's tonight or down the road, and you've got a project you're trying to work on, it doesn't have to be perfect to fill a need. This is not near done where I want it to be, and it's still helped out. So, but no, we had a generator that ran. We borrowed one. It was a 5,000 watt. The microwave as needed. I was able to run the air fryer as needed. Coffee, it made coffee, and that was a whole lot nicer than that first day of having to go outside and boil some on the turkey fryer pot. So, I would do that for coffee, but a whole lot nicer to go in there and just press a couple buttons for some morning coffee. But yeah, just going with it. And I will say, I talked to Steve Frazier earlier that day at Field Day, the actual Field Day, not Field Day 2.0, and he had even made a couple suggestions about keeping an eye on extension cords. And so, and I know one thing that we require that Joe makes sure to mention at Field Day is, make sure anybody who has a generator have a fire extinguisher. And so I had a couple that were out of date, and I know that's not good, but they were out of date. And so as soon as we got a hold of a generator, I went and got a new fire extinguisher to make sure that was there in case we needed it, but we never did, thankfully. And I knew earlier that day to keep an eye on the extension cords, make sure that we plugged in the best heavy-duty extension cords and not some of the cheaper ones that could overheat. Even little things like that, you might not think about that it matters, but if you go to Field Day and go to these events, stuff like that all adds up. So, when you end up without power, yeah.
Tell them what you did after the net on that Friday night.
I realized that. Okay, so I called the net. This was what, 5 or 6 days into not having power. That Thursday and Friday were when the temperatures hit around 100 degrees, 99 or 100. And by then I started working a little bit, but I was very tired because it was just me running to go get gas, all the gas, then you gotta go out there and monitor it, and then when you're doing all that, when you're filling the generator, changing the oil, all that stuff that you're supposed to do, you're doing that out in the heat as well. And I've been on the phone with my mom at like 6 o'clock that evening, and I was like, hey, I'm going out to get something to eat. I am tired, this is tough, but we've got everything here, we're I'm chugging along, but it is getting tough or whatever. And then the call dropped out. And so I didn't really think anything of it because we had been having Verizon issues on and off all week. And by the time we got to the net, that's when they mentioned, they were like, well, the cell phone service outage looks like it's gonna be for like 12 to 14 hours. I was like, oh no. So after the net, I got on and I called for Joe on the ham radio, and he came back and I kind of talked to him for a little bit and asked if he might, since he had power, if he could try to either on his landline or something, get in touch with my mom just to let her know that I was okay, because I know you guys don't know my mom, but she's the kind of person like any mother would do. If she's not sure what's going on with one of her kids, she's gonna climb across Timbuktu to make sure we're okay. And so he wasn't able to get in touch with her over the phone, and finally was able to send a text out. So I sat there monitoring my radio until he came on at like 9 o'clock or 9:30, something like that. Said he finally got a text out to her that said, hey, this is Joe, WA4OVO. There's an outage. Mary Jean says she's okay, or something, something along those lines. And I talked to my mom, and she acknowledged it. And I talked to her later, and she said that she was getting everything ready to go in her car to drive about 2.5 hours to get there around midnight or later to make sure I was okay. And so, it may not have been ham radio that got that final communication across, but it was sure ham radio that got that message from where I was at to get out of the area. And I know we say all the time, when all else fails, and I know, we've got different things, there's different areas, there's digital, and all that, so we can get into the nice fancy stuff, but at the end of the day, it was a simple little radio that, and it wasn't an emergency, but it saved her from extreme worry, because I know many of you are parents, and so I'm sure if you're, if you had a phone call cut out or something with one of your kids, that you might consider the same, especially with everything we had going on, and there's no telling. So that brought a lot of peace to her, which brought a lot of peace to me, knowing that she knew something and all that, to at least hold on until Saturday so I could talk to her. So that was pretty cool, and it definitely gave me a different level of appreciation for ham radio. So I guess is that everything?
Thank you, Mary Jean.
It wasn't just Verizon, AT&T got really wishy-washy in part of it, I know.
Okay, so just about
It
everything.
was region-wide too. It was several states were down because, like you said, it was a fiber barn that was cut. So it wasn't just the Ellendale area. It was a large area.
So I know that, we hear that saying, when all else fails, ham radio. This was a real life example of it. So, and props to Mary Jean for all she did. I was just blown away to hear her calling me that. Ed, did you have something?
Yeah, one of our hams on the KOG network is Wes, KA7 UEC. He works for AT&T, and his job is to make sure the cell sites are up. So that I think on Tuesday, after the storm hit, or Wednesday, somewhere in there, he was running around trying to get it. I think he had already gotten everything up at about 8 sites.
Cool.
And I don't know how many sites were down in the initial one. I would think somewhere around 30, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, I know on my way into work, the morning after the storm, I didn't have cell service as well until I got closer to work. But, yeah, I'm sure he was definitely very, very busy. But definitely appreciate those efforts. So one question that you most likely won't know the answer to in a power outage: how long will your power be out?
Yes.
So the power goes out, you're not gonna know necessarily how long it's gonna be out, so your solution has to be replenishable. I was talking to a neighbor, he literally lives 2 blocks away from me. My power came on in like 17, 18 hours. You were out 4 days.
Yeah.
So, yeah, just no way of knowing. So whatever your solution is for backup power, need to make sure that it's sustainable. Just quick show of hands, how many people in here have generators? Just about everybody, okay. How many don't? So a few, okay.
It's all in order.
So.
Well, and to get up,
You're in the country and I can't believe you're not.
So some questions to ask. What devices do you need to provide power for? Refrigerator, internet router, that's, I use a little UPS on my router at the house, and it actually powers longer than what Comcast battery backups do for their node down the street. So I don't really have to power with a generator because by the time the generator would power it, Comcast is already dead. So gas furnace in the wintertime anyway.
Yep.
Microwave, lights, mobile device chargers, a TV. You know, we have digital over-the-air signals now, so you can get news and information over a regular TV.
Coffee pot.
Very good, very good.
kegerator.
They get
So,
you on it, yeah.
So yeah, that I definitely will tell you from personal experience, I prefer power outages in the winter. So
Yeah, I agree, yeah.
I have a gas stove, I have gas heat, and so I literally run an extension cord up into the attic and unplug the furnace, plug into there just to run the blower, and I don't miss a lick. I'm
Gas,
perfectly
hot water
comfortable.
heater, you got hot water?
Yeah, unfortunately, my water heater is not gas, but we had a gas line run for the stove, and when we did, we had them extend the tap over to where the water heater is, so when that puppy goes out, guess what it's getting replaced with?
Yeah.
So,
One other thing you can do is, if you have gas heat, have a battery bank and an inverter, and you can run your
Blower motor.
blower motor. Usually the blower motor is a 1/3 horsepower.
Right.
1 horsepower is what, 754 watts.
True.
So, true, on startup, you're gonna be pulling quite a bit more. But if you have a battery bank with a couple of 35 amp hour batteries, I've got, I think, 5 or 6 35 amp hour batteries with a with a low amp charger on it, and I keep it up in the attic where, for the winter, that way I can have heat and I don't have to go out and get the generator out.
What size inverter you running?
1,000.
Okay.
And one of the things, the inverter generators, you have a trick that Rick Tillman found out, is that for some reason on the inverters, you literally have to take the return wire and attach it to the ground wire you basically short the two to be able to get the generator to run the furnace fan.
Style pilot line, you know, that's like.
Electronic pilot lines instead of old.
gotcha.
It has to have that neutral and ground shorted together.
Okay.
Neutral.
So this is great stuff. This is exactly what I had in mind tonight.
That's for inverter generators.
Yeah.
Now you see what I'm talking about with a wealth of knowledge on that bus.
Exactly, exactly. So,
Well, I've frankly never moved into a home in the last 3 homes that I haven't done if you have a simple home with 1 box, oftentimes they're outside, you put a little box near it that has a the 50 amp 4-pin, And then if you have a generator,
Yep.
it's about a $600 or $700 electrician job to come out and convert your box. You turn the master switch off, you power that down, and then you turn the generator on. You backfeed it. There's no crossing of power. $700
Yeah,
solution.
transfer
You've got a
switch.
generator.
Well, they even have a switch that you can put in your box if you have a couple of open, panels in the box, to where it will switch over from the main power to your generator power, and there is no question whether you're gonna backfeed to the regular.
Right, yeah, it's a transfer switch.
Interlock.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's only $700 or $800 max for a simple solution. If you have two boxes, it's different.
Okay.
My new house has two boxes, so it wasn't that cheap.
that's great to know. So, that's on my to-do list.
I'll tell you who to call if you want.
All right.
Okay.
So some additional questions. Are any of these devices life-saving medical devices? So CPAPs, oxygen machines, things like that? Do you have pets that require electricity? I have an aquarium, so, don't want my fish to die. So, I mean, stuff you gotta think about.
So, those of you who know me, I spent 30 years on the Memphis Fire Department, and I know, you see my pension. The fire departments, if you have a legitimate, and the best thing to do is register with them ahead of time. If you have a legitimate, you're on an oxygen generator, you're on we had a guy in my territory in the early days, it was on an iron lung.
Yeah.
And, yeah, exactly. And, if you have those devices that you have, they will bring a generator to you, they will fuel it, they will do everything.
That's awesome.
Wow.
Is that
That's
Memphis,
awesome.
or what city is that, Memphis or the county shelter?
Most all of them around here.
Now,
That's
I had a
great.
kid across the street from me.
Every fire truck,
Neurological disease. Every time the power went out,
I got a
there was a fire truck in front of their house running extension cord into it to power their equipment for it.
most of the time, we'll drop the generator off, chain it up, and we'll come back, we know how much we need to fuel, so we do that frequently.
I don't know about that.
That's awesome.
Yeah, good, go get them.
So, how much effort do you want to put into deploying your solution? A lot of that comes down to cost, because if I have my druthers, I just want it to be all automatic, but yeah, I mean, something you gotta think about. Do you wanna be out there in the rain, running extension cords outside? Or would you just rather have it kick on automatically and not even realize the power went out, other than the noise of the generator?
Be sure the generator is 30 feet from your house.
Yep, you do not want to get carbon monoxide inside your house, that is for sure.
And
Well, I've got solar generators.
take care of open windows and open doors that you're trying to cool off with, because that, not just gas, will flow.
And E-vents.
Yep.
Huh?
E-vents.
Yeah, E-vents, absolutely. Good, very good point. And soffits too, as well. Just a
Yeah.
whole piece.
So how do you plan on replenishing the power? If it's a storm and you're running a gas generator and your gas cans are all empty and the trees are blocking the road between you and the gas station, what are you gonna do? So, have a plan, keep some gas on hand if that's what you're doing for power. My manager at work has a dual fuel that does propane, like the grill bottles, and he was running his generator off of that, and lo and behold, he couldn't get any replacement grill bottles because they were every place was out shortly after the power outage because of other people that also had propane. I'm not saying not to get a propane generator. I'm just saying it's something to consider. Go ahead, Joe.
Just for people that propane gives you a lot lower
Nope,
output.
natural gas.
Huh?
Natural gas.
Gasoline, propane, natural gas. Those
Well,
are-
but propane gives you less than gasoline.
Yes.
Right, that's BTU. The lowest one is natural gas,
Yeah.
it's about 12%.
One thing I did with my neighbor, we didn't know how long it was gonna be. I was swapping him full bottles of propane and he was giving me gas.
And your own little, barter system there.
It's a
That's
very
awesome.
easy conversion for a generator. It's a $200 conversion to convert mine to natural gas.
Okay.
And it's very
And
simple.
that's another option. You know, that is definitely,
It's about $30 a day to run my 7K.
okay.
Unless the earthquake occurs.
Hey, if you that happens, we got more problems than
So, since we've already broached the topic generators, you can deploy them quickly or even automatically. They provide 110 or 220 gas, natural gas, propane, and you can have them in portable or fixed operation. So whole home generators, expensive. And it's not just the cost of the generator, it's the installation as well. Again, my same manager, we had an interesting discussion shortly after the power outage where I was of the opinion that in my neighborhood, when our power goes out, we're usually back up within 24 hours. So I can't justify spending the money on a whole home generator when our power's out maybe once a year, for one day a year. However, my son's in-laws live out at Shelby Forest, and when their power goes out, it's usually out for over 2 weeks. And they do have a whole home generator, and so, you know, I get it. I totally understand, and, yes, Mary Jane?
And I'm gonna piggyback off of what you're saying. So I live in the part of Bartlett, Ellendale, where all the power lines are underground. So historically, anytime Shelby County has lost a lot of power, give us a day at the most, and we've got our power back. But because of how widespread this storm was, we were some of the last ones to get it because the power lines feeding into our neighborhood were and what it sounds like they posted later, it was underground wiring issues, and that's why they saved us for last. And so all the power lines that fed into the underground lines, I guess when the trees yanked out the power lines, it not only knocked it over, it yanked those lines out. And
Maybe
they
the
had to-
reach, got some of the
So like,
underground.
you know, even if you're not in a rush, whether it's to get a whole home generator, or it sounds like everybody here just about has one, but if you don't have a generator and you're kind of, oh, well, when we lose power, we always get it back quick. Don't assume that, because we were out literally an extra 7 days from our average of losing it. And so have we not been able to borrow one from somebody? And I'm in the process of fixing one up, and I've kind of lit a fire under myself to get that done quick. And
Yeah, I saw
maybe
your
buy a
story about
second
delivery
one.
on a part for a generator.
but don't,
It was literally stuck in,
Oh, and yeah, and I thought it was, earlier in the month of June, cause it was getting to be field day time, and I was like, I need to work on our power sources. I'd ordered a starter spring coil for the generator that we needed to fix up, and it was supposed to arrive at our house on the 19th of June, and it got stuck. Amazon transferred it over to USPS, and it got stuck there. And we never got it, and so literally like 4 days, 5 days into the power outage, I reordered it again, and we got it, the new part in the day,
The next
the
day.
day after, the day before we got power back. But like, either way though, just don't assume, if you never lose power for that long, don't assume that that's gonna be the case. Cause something crazy could happen, and then you could be without it for a week or two.
yeah. And basically what I'm saying is, I can't justify over a portable generator. A portable generator gets me by just fine for the 1 day a year. If I do have to run it more than a day at a time, so be it. But, no deployment needed. They're fully automatic. They require professional installation, and according to my son's father-in-law, in order to keep it under warranty, they have to have an oil change every 150 hours, and it has to be done by a licensed technician. So when he realized that, he called the technician, said the technician came out, and there was 146 hours on the generator, so he just barely squeaked by. But he didn't know that initially. So don't know if it was an oversight on his part, or they didn't tell him, or what. I believe so. I think it's Generac. So,
The other thing is, if your power goes out to your house, and MLD&W is responsible for restoring it, you're at the bottom of the list. You're an individual, they're gonna go after the block that's out,
Right,
whatever.
yeah, if you're just
at the bottom
a
of the
single,
list. You might be the only person on your block without power, but you're,
yeah, well, they want those meters running, so the more meters they get spending, the more money
There
they're
was a
gonna
big, there was
get.
a big piece to this because St. Francis Bartlett was out of power.
Yeah,
So there was a lot of concentration going on.
oh, I have
Oh,
no
yeah,
doubt.
they're
they
number
were-
one.
They were concentrating on that. So now on to portable, they're less expensive than a whole home, usually gasoline or propane, portable and easy to deploy. Yeah, there we go. You do usually have to manually deploy them, but as you said, you can tie them into your natural gas
Yeah,
as a
I built
conversion.
the hutch for it and it doesn't move. I just go out and turn the valve and crank it up.
They can be dangerous, especially when you're refueling or the carbon monoxide if you don't have it far enough from the house.
Please, please, turn the generator off, let it cool down, then fuel it.
Exactly.
Preferably with a fuel system where you can pump it up and, you know, like you would. Please.
Some other,
I know. We can all
NASCAR
done
style.
it.
yes,
yeah, I your last fuel, refuel, put stable in the fuel.
yes. I also turn the fuel, but I don't know who told me this trick. And I've
Run the
always done it.
carburetor ball dry.
Yeah, I turn the fuel valve off and let it run till it just dies so that there's no fuel in the carburetor.
There's a
It won't
life-
gum up
there's a
that way.
life of that additive as well.
Yeah.
So if you don't check it for 3 years, that's gonna come out like.
It's gonna be
plastic.
jello.
So, my portable generator, I have kids and they cut my grass, they do all kinds of things with extension cords. So I have a small, it's about this high, it's like a Rubbermaid shed that's got 2 doors that swing out, and I literally have my generator on casters in there. I have 2 5-gallon gas cans in there, and I have the heavy duty extension cords that I use for the generator in there, and I put a padlock on it, so everything's in one place that I need. I'm not saying you have to go to that
Better chain
extreme.
them together,
Huh?
better chain them together with a heavy chain.
So, but so far, knock on wood, I've had great luck with keeping my kids out of the gas, because when he cuts the grass and stuff, if he knew that I had 5 gallons of gas sitting in there, 10 gallons, he'd sure enough use it, and then when we have an emergency and I go to fill the generator up,
No gas.
no gas, so. Solar. I'm a big proponent of solar. In low power situations, if you're doing like 12 volt applications or lower current applications, very easy to deploy. You can custom design your own solar system to fit your needs. Whole home application requires permanent installation, and those would be expensive to install, but obviously cheap to replenish. Dave, did you want to share anything about your solar setup?
I'll share one thing that point you said, the whole house application requires permanent installation. So I'm sure if anybody knows Will Krause on YouTube, he does a cart. He puts a 48 volt battery on a cart and a grow watt, and that could just about power a whole house, and that would be portable.
Okay.
That's an option. If anybody was getting into solar, I would highly recommend systems that can do 12 volt, 24, and 40 volt if possible. Because once you get started in solar, it's hard to stop. So you'll constantly add into it, and if you have the possibility to go from 12 to 24 volt, it'll save you a lot of money in the long run.
Is it one of the big deals about whether 12, 24, 48 relative to how many watts you're gonna draw on an inverter?
Mostly amps. How much?
Gauge
Because,
of wire.
well,
Yeah, gauge of wire.
Gauge of watts, but the wire is.
Yeah, you'll save money in the wire.
It's all subjective too, though. I mean, if your goal is only to do 12 volt, if all you're doing is powering a couple of laptops and some radio gear, then you don't need to run an inverter. But if you're trying to run more, or you're wanting to run some AC devices,
And I would definitely recommend buying a larger inverter than what you think you need.
Yeah,
So
right.
if you're like, I only need 1,000, get a 2,000, because you're not gonna lose anything for not using as much.
right.
Yeah, I got off Amazon, I bought all it is a battery maintainer, solar, and it is 13.8 volts, all it does is keep your generator battery trickle charged.
Yeah.
Because, you go out to start your generator, the last thing you want is the battery dead on your generator.
Right.
And so I think this thing cost me like $69, put it on the roof of my shed where my generator's at, and it just keeps the battery charged, both on my tractor and on my generator. It's like $69, it was not that expensive, and easy peasy.
Pretty good.
So solar can be a good option. Just requires some planning. So power for communications. Operate from your vehicle. Most everybody probably has a mobile radio, I'm assuming, in their car, or your handy-talkie. But I wish Barry was here, because I'm kind of curious how long some of our repeaters are up. Are they all on generator, or some of them just on battery? Rick, you might know.
Which one's
Well, obviously the
3700's on battery, but it has a whole building generator.
Okay, that's what I figured.
About 3.2.
So 443.700, you'd still be able to get to, because they've got backup power. And the 8.2 when it works, I know is on full generator.
Just rub it in.
So a charged battery, if you have a charged battery already to run your radio gear, then you can use that. I mentioned handy-talkie, or, thanks to Richard Martin, he told me about this thing called a Power Gate. I don't know, when was that? 6 months, 9 months ago?
Something like that.
I bought that joker. I love it. It's my favorite little gadget. I bought one, and I have it screwed into the side of my desk next to my Anderson Power Pole distribution block. And my power supply goes in on one side. Battery, a 40 amp hour battery, plugs into the other side, and then the load, or the distribution block, plugs in to it. So what this thing does is it basically keeps that battery topped off as long as think of it as a 12 volt UPS in a nutshell. So I can turn my power supply off if my radio doesn't even realize it. So they range in price. The one I bought, I'm a cheapskate, I got it off of Amazon. I think it was about $44. DX Engineering sells some, the brand being West Mountain Radio, and they range in price depending on what you want them to do and how many amps you want them to do. You can get them as low as 100 on DX Engineering, all the way up to, I think 189 is the one that does the solar. You can actually plug a solar panel into it as well in conjunction. Yes, Mary Jean?
I was gonna say too, this is a great time right now to buy anything, whether you don't have any system set up or whether you have something and you kind of maybe wanna update it a little bit, because I'm not really on Amazon Prime, but Amazon Prime is running all kinds of specials on like the Renogy solar panels.
Yeah, today and tomorrow.
They had some specials on lithium iron phosphate batteries, and then I found cause I was talking to John earlier today, even 200 watt solar panels, a 40 amp controller, and the whole, that whole kit was on sale at Amazon for I think $340, and Home Depot had them on sale for $324. And so, there's a lot of places right now, if you're thinking about getting any of this, today and tomorrow is probably the day to look online if you're an online
Yeah.
shopper. Because
If you have the
they may
means,
very
yeah.
well be on sale back to where they were, pre-inflation and everything before prices.
Yeah, because
spiked,
a
so.
couple of weeks ago, I noticed Raspberry Pis, the Model 4 was like $140, $150, and the other day I refreshed it, it was down to 89. I was like, whoa, what happened? That's almost what they were pre-COVID. So, yeah, Power Gates, I really like them. Think that's really a
So what is that, like a bus bar, or you said it was more like a UPS, so there's actually a battery in that, or?
No, you have to provide an external battery.
So it's basically just a bus blow.
Yeah.
Okay.
The automatic switch.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, it's got electronics in it. It's more than just-
It's got circuitry to keep your battery charged
Yeah.
off of your 12-volt power supply. And then if it senses that your 12-volt power supply stops putting out power, it switches over to the battery.
And the power supply plugged into it is powering your equipment as long as it's on. The circuitry where it switches over, the power supply has to that.
So I was
Does it
like,
keep the voltage up to 12 volts or 13.2?
Yeah, I think it does regulate
And
that.
if the battery goes down, the circuitry in the power gate will still give you 13.2?
yeah.
Not necessarily. It's not a voltage booster.
I've got one in my truck that does do that, though. It's automatic because a Honda truck sits and runs idle at 11.7, and every time I turn the power off, I could only talk for about 10 minutes, and the battery would get low enough that the radio wouldn't work. So I put a battery under the back seat, and I got a charger on it that automatically charges that battery from whatever input up to at 14.7, it desulfates for about a minute and a half, then it drops back to charge. And then I have a timer on it, so I turn the switch off, and I can talk for 30 minutes.
The cops never come in here.
The thing is with these, it also depends on which model you get. Some of them you can actually program, some of these, where you can program what voltage you want it to kick over at, or how high you want it to charge your battery. Some of them are completely automatic. So, just something interesting that I was.
Have you driven your $49 one hard before? Have you tested it hard?
Yes, I have tested it. It
All
works
right.
just fine.
Cool.
So, haven't tested it as far as seeing how long the radio will run on that battery. But I have killed the power to the while I was talking, killed the power to the power supply, and the radio didn't miss a lick. So for communications, when you got a power outage, it's pretty good deal. So that's really all I've got. Does anybody else want to talk about anything power related? Or anything else for that matter?
Red to red, black to black.
Yeah.
Unless it's a
There you go.
negative positive.
So, all right, well, thank you. I hope you all picked up something useful. So, I know a lot of
All right, well, thank you, John. Thank you, John, for leading that discussion. And then also let's see. Can we give one more round of applause to Randy before he leaves? All right. So does anybody else have anything they want to bring up or discuss?
It looks like Huntsville will probably be a go. I think I have some others that are going to commit, and hopefully we can have it.
Exciting news.
right.
Good. Well, I will say in that case, if you're on the fence about it, or you're not sure if like timing or money or whatever will work, and you realize later, you can also still go. As long as we're having it and we have enough that we're able to go, you can still add at the last minute as long as there's a seat open. So if you are interested later, it might cost a little bit more, but reach out to Joe and see if there's availability still, and talk to him if you decide that you can go later on. All right, so we are in a different meeting location. I know we all know that, but we want to make sure that we leave this place cleaner than it was when we got here. So I would encourage you to please make sure you look around, make sure any trash or chip pieces or whatever, any of that's picked up and thrown away. Make sure your chairs are pushed in. All the cleanup, housekeeping stuff, so that way that we just don't want them to regret letting us use this facility and a last minute thing, so definitely, let's make them happy that they were able to reach out to us, or, you know, let us use it. So, all right, well, if nothing else, if there's no objection, we will be adjourned at 8:40.